back again, and today we will be building on my favorite genre. Well, not my favorite genre, but one of my favorite genres, definitely my favorite genre around fall, and that's the horror genre, right? Uh, it's been a lot of great horrors lately, right? Sinners just came out. I wouldn't necessarily call it a horror film in the sense, but it did have horror elements to it, right? It was a vampire film. Also, Nosferatu was I thought it was a great vampire film also that recently came out, and I thought that was dope. But we're going to get into and deal with on this breakdown the slasher genre, right? The patriarchal porn and pain element in the slasher genre, right? We have to look at this and examine it through the eyes of putting out horror films that deal with teenagers, specifically teenage women, teenage girls in a Christian country, right? And the film that really gets us, like, really gets the horror genre really rolling is Albert Hitchcock's classic Psycho, right? Psycho with Norman Bates, right? And and in this horror genre that deal with the slasher that is birthed from the Psycho film, right, is a theme of mother issues and woman issues, right? So that's one when we look at Albert Hitchcock's masterpiece Psycho, right, with Norman Bates and his mom. He had the mom issues, right? Um, we see the beautiful woman, right? And she steals something. She steals some money from a job, and she goes later on goes to a hotel, and she runs into Norman Bates, and he's a psycho, right? We all know the story, and he slashes her with the knife, right? He slashed her with the knife in the shower, and this bursts I would say burst the slasher genre that deals with the mom issues, right? The mom issues, Psycho and Norman Bates, and then we get into, because in the film industry, it's just like the music industry, right? Many people that are in charge are not creative. They're not creative. I tell people that all the time, right? These execs, these music execs, they don't know what talent is. Jizza said it. Who's your A&R? A mountain climber that plays an electric guitar, but he don't know the meaning of dope. You know what I'm saying? He don't know. So when you don't know, you just copycat, right? It's a copycat league, right? So when you see something have success, and this is something that capitalism does in the film industry, in the music industry, people that are at the top just to make money, right? They see something that's going, and they immediately, instead of being creative and jumping in their creative bag, they try to find a copycat, and this destroys art, and this destroys unique art, right? And makes everybody begin to kind of become the same, and the radio begins to sound the same, the artists look the same, and we're talking about film, but film does this too, right? So after Psycho, later on, you get The Mask Killer, which is 1978's John Carpenter's Halloween, which is my favorite horror film of all time. 1978, right? Um, and Michael Myers, known for chasing pretty young teenage girls down with the knife, right? Later on, when Rob Zombie did his, it got deeper into Michael Myers' mom issues and his sister issues. When the film first starts, you see the sister is naked in the shower, right? Naked in the bathroom, and she gets slashed. This is a patriarchal, element that usually in these films when it's a young pretty girl and she's open with her sexuality a little bit, right? She gotta go in this genre historically, the slasher genre. So you know, that's Michael Myers, right? The mom issues, right? Um, mom didn't take him out on Halloween. She was too busy with the man, right? She was too busy with her man. Sister didn't take her out by herself, right? Um, so we see that in that genre, right? And then all through Halloween, we see all the teenage girls that are beautiful and sexually liberated. They all become victims of Michael Myers, right? The ones that's drinking beer, having sex, smoking cigarettes. They all end up getting slashed one by Michael Myers, right? But our scream queen, Laurie Strode in Halloween, right? The innocent good girl, beauty of the franchise, right? Uh, you know, she's the babysitter staying at home doing the right thing, right? She gets to live, she get to survive, and that's the theme you'll see in many of these films, right? We go to Halloween too, right? And in the early on, you see the beautiful woman, right? That is having sex, getting ready to, right, gets attacked by Michael also, right? And then you see kind of the porn undertone element where he slashes her in the tub, right? Um, this is a porn patriarchal element to the film, also to this genre, this slasher genre, right? Dealing with you know, slaughtering young, beautiful women, right, who are sexually liberated to a degree. Now, from there, we look at Jason, right? Friday the 13th. You see the same formula, Mad series. Jason ain't nothing. Jason, I hate to do it to my Friday the 13th lovers, but Jason is nothing but a poor man's Halloween, right? That's all it is. Got the same mom issues element, just at Camp Crystal Lake, right? Same mom element. Um, Same formula as the Psycho and uh, Norman Bates, right? The mom issues. Jason always dealing with his mama telling him what to do, like just like Norman Bates and Psycho, right? Uh, so this is throughout. Jason and Michael have uh, many films, right? They literally drained every dollar that they could out of these franchises, right? And uh, in all of the franchises, especially I would say in majority of uh, the Friday the 13th, all of the women that was having sex, they all die while having sex, right? Nobody have sex in this film and gets out alive, right? Because in the patriarchal, radical Christian society, sex is bad, even though none of us would be here without sex, right? But this is the pattern of that. Now, in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right, we see the same formula. The sexually active characters meet a painful death soon after, right? Or they even die during a sex encounter. Uh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003, Jessica Biel, right? She's the good girl who gets to survive in the film, right? She got to survive, but not after. She got to run through. She got to run through Texas, being chased in the woods, uh, with a wife beater, right? No bra up under. So you know what I'm saying? That's the element to these films, right? It's the element to these films, right? It's even one Texas Chainsaw Massacre film you see where Leatherface literally sticks the chainsaw in between one of the girl's legs, right? This represents the penis. This 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 is a symbolization of the penis, right? Going into right between the character's legs, right? So that's the porn element that you're getting in these films, right? Um, the '80s had a lot of these films that they were trash. A lot of these was trash. Like I always feel like even though Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street is legendary and Freddy Krueger is legendary, many of those films were trash, right? They just this the slasher genre was didn't produce a lot of great films, but it just produced classic, like just if you into the kills and you know what I mean. But for the most part, they were cheesy slasher films, right? Now, one of these films was called Slumber Party Massacre, right? Same thing, beautiful, sexy, young, liberated women being stalked by a madman who's obsessed with their beauty and sexuality, right? But if you look at the cover art, it's straight out of dark porn, right? Look at the dark porn, right? Young, beautiful women on their knees in submission stance, looking up as the killer stands over them as if he's ready to receive oral sex, right? This is, this is teenage a theme with the teenage girls and dealing with them during their years where they're coming into their own, right? Right. Right. So now let's look at Scream, right? 90s classic, late 90s classic. Scream, right? Young, beautiful women sexually liberated in the prime years of their beauty being stalked and haunted by male predators. Again, right? Again. Um, so when we also see the porn element in this film, right? The porn element in this film, from the directors, right? And also in the Scream series, right? Sydney Prescott, right? That's our Laurie Strode in the modern times, right? That's the character. That's she's different from all the other girls, right? She's different from all the other girls. She's not as sexually liberated. She's more conservative and more reserved. She's not like the party girls, right? And she always gets to survive, right? There you go, right there, right? So, you don't have sex and you do right, you get to live. You go out there, you smoke weed and you get drunk and you meet people and you wild out, you got to die, right? So these are all even through these films at the time, right? More at the time, more so at the time versus now, right? But more so at the time, these films are like, even kind of with the films you could program, and these films like intention like we got to scare some of these girls from wilding out, right? If you wild out, this could happen to you, right? So, um, you gotta understand that film uh can play with the subconscious mind, right? Creators, right? Now, Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy, right? Nancy is different from the other girls also, so she gets to survive the madman Dreamstalker in this film, which is Freddy Krueger. Freddy also has a background like Norman Bates, right? Michael Myers and Jason. He was born to a Catholic mother who was raped, right? By a psychopath who broke free from an asylum. And since she couldn't abort him because it was against her religion, she had him, right? And Freddy carried that evil spirit of his father, which was harassing and stalking women, right? So this is what Freddy does. He's the Night Stalker. He stalks women in their dreams, young girls to be specific, right? So we see that in the Freddy. We see that with the Freddy films also, right? The same thing. The classic bathtub scene on Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Where the girl is laying in where she's laying in the bathtub, right? She's laying in the bathtub, and Nancy's laying in the bathtub par herself, and Freddy's claws come right between her legs, right between her legs. That's the porn element. That's in the film, right? The young girl, right? The young girl. So you now we look at 1973, The Exorcist, right, where a supposed to be 12-year-old girl, because this was an actual 12-year-old during these darker scenes that was going on in this film, right, is infiltrated spiritually by a demon, and the demon uses a cross to masturbate, right. This is a super dark, and I remember I seen this as a kid, right. I don't know why. Like I had an older sister, and my sister was had me watching things I probably shouldn't have been watching right at that time, but I wanted to keep up with Big Sis. So yeah, and this is the only when we was kids, right? My sister was never scared of nothing, but this was one of the films that I remember her like, yo, I gotta turn this shit off, right? So she turned it off, and if you really want to nerd out, right? Uh, you know, look up all the things that happened, like the weird things that happened on the set of The Exorcist, right? The stage caught on fire. Uh, you know, actors, I believe actors died at, look into that, man. Just look into that if you really want to nerd out, right? So, this film, right, dealing with the young girl who's battling demons, right, and even a sex demon that is making her masturbate with this cross, right? This is dark. This is dark stuff, right? And this is 1973, right? And this is dealing with the Catholic Church, right? This is dealing with the Catholic Church, right? So again, we see that even in The Exorcist, right? Films like The Last House on the Left, right, the remake and the original, also highlight the same pattern. The young girls that are sexually liberated and using drugs or alcohol being slaughtered by male stalkers and madmen, right? Going out to party and have fun, and they some bad happens to them, right? Now, the last film we will analyze is I Spit on Your Grave, right? It had the same formula, but this time it was a woman revenge film. So after the film character is sexually assaulted, right, beaten, tortured by mad men who seem to think that women who are comfortably in their beauty deserve to be sexually assaulted, right? So I didn't watch the original. I watched the one that dropped in about 2008 or 9, right? And it's about a author who goes to a small town to finish her book off, and runs into small town men, three men, and they, she's a big city girl, and they feel like just because she's a big city girl that she's full of sin, and they feel like they can have their way with her, which they do, and she gets revenge on this, she gets revenge on them in this film. So that's your poetic justice in this film, right? The woman gets revenge on all of the men who do her wrong. But again, this film, because you had the original, then you had the one that dropped in the remake in '08, which again highlight in this genre, women being, assaulted and slaughtered, and the pain, the pornography element to these films, and the patriarchal element to these films, right? Now, if you read the book Stephen King book it's a long read, right? It's a long read. I got halfway through, right? It's a long read though. Now, Beverly, right? Beverly was the young female in the lovers club, right? In the losers club, sorry, pardon self, right? She was she was sexually liberated, and her stepfather seemed to be sexually attracted to her at times and abusive of her because of her sexual beauty. As she got older in chapter two, her boyfriend was also sexually abusive to her because of his because of her sexual prowess, right? Also in the novel, The Losers Club, all of the boys have their turns with Beverly, right? Now that's something that didn't make it into the films, right? But that's a black eye for Stephen King, that him putting that into the novel, right? Where um, all of the boys in the Losers Club get to have their way with Beverly, right? That was in that book. Like they had like a team, like they ran a train on right on Beverly. So even in those horror genres, which turned into later on to the TV series and then films, right? And we got a Welcome to Derry series coming out sometime this year, right? But we even see it then, right? We even see it then. So sexualizing younger girls and feeling like you can have your way with them, and you know what I mean? The porn, the patriarchal element to this genre, right? Um, so let me see if make sure I touched on everything. Um, did we? Something else that I wanted to talk to you about. Um, oh, okay. I give you one more, right? My favorite horror film, which is a psychological horror film. It's a psychological horror film, but it is indeed a horror film, and it's my favorite horror film. Uh, it's not necessarily in the slasher genre, but it's in the psychological horror genre. Um, when we look at Clarice, right? Clarice from The Silence of the Lambs, where she's if you look at the film, even in the beginning of the film, when she walks into an elevator, it's like she's the only woman in the elevator, and it's almost like it's an indication of all of these men. It's almost like comes across like they can have their way with her, right? Um, she's a detective in a mostly male dominated field, right? Career wise, and she feels it in this film. When she goes in to deal with Hannibal Lecter, she's sexualized by the doctor, and then she's even sexualized by many of the inmates. Right, one of them even uh, semen, throws his semen, right, in this asylum, this insane asylum, throws his semen. I believe it was Wild Bill, right? Wild Bill throws his semen at Clarice, and it gets on her cheek. Right, so you see this element again in these films, right? All these films that deal with women, right? That deal with women. Um, on that note, family, we're 20 minutes in, we're gonna wrap it up.